Imagine moving into your dream home, only to be controlled by a group of strangers who fine you for everything, even things that aren't against the rules. This is my true HOA nightmare, and how I turned the tables on them. Welcome to American HOA Stories. I never thought moving into a quiet, gated neighborhood would turn into the biggest nightmare of my life. When my wife and I first bought this house, I was excited. The lawns were neat, the streets were clean, and the neighbors smiled and waved. Everything looked perfect, almost like something out of a magazine. But I quickly learned that perfection came with a price. And that price was called the HOA, the Homeowners Association. At first, I didn't think much about them. They sent out monthly newsletters about community events, small reminders about garbage collection, and the occasional "please keep your lawn trimmed." Harmless, right? I paid my dues on time and assumed that would be the end of it. But one day, I came home from work and found a bright yellow envelope taped to my front door. It had the official HOA stamp on it. I tore it open, expecting maybe a reminder about trash pickup. Instead, the letter almost made me laugh out loud. They were demanding that I repaint my house. Not because the paint was peeling. Not because the color was offensive. But simply because they didn't like it. The letter read, "Your home's exterior color does not conform to the aesthetic standards of our community. Please repaint within 14 days, or fines will be applied at the rate of $100 per day." I stood there in disbelief. My house was a simple beige color. Neutral. Clean. Nothing flashy. It was the same shade as half the other houses on the street. I thought, this has to be a mistake. So, the next morning, I called the HOA office. A woman with a sharp voice answered. "HOA office, this is Linda speaking." "Hi, Linda. I think I got a letter by mistake. It says I need to repaint my house, but my color is beige. It's the same as several others." There was a pause. Then she said flatly, "It's not the same beige. Your tone is slightly warmer, and it doesn't match the approved palette." I almost laughed. Slightly warmer? Was she serious? "You can't be serious," I said. "This is my house. The paint is fine. It's not even noticeable." But Linda didn't budge. "Sir, the board has already reviewed your case. If you fail to comply, you'll be fined." Click. She hung up. That was the moment I realized the HOA wasn't here to help. They were here to control. Over the next few days, things got worse. I received 2 more letters, each one more threatening than the last. Failure to comply will result in legal action. Daily fines will accumulate and be reported to collections. It felt like harassment. My wife was starting to panic. What if they take us to court? What if they put a lien on our house? I tried to stay calm, but inside I was boiling. How can they tell me what color to paint my house when there's nothing wrong with it? That's when I decided to fight back. First, I went to the HOA website and downloaded their entire rulebook. I spent hours reading every single page. And what I found shocked me. There was no mention of approved paint colors. None. They had guidelines about trash cans, lawn maintenance, fence height, but nothing about house paint. They were bluffing. Armed with this knowledge, I wrote them a letter of my own. I quoted their own bylaws, word for word. I ended the letter with, "If you continue to harass me with baseless fines, I will consider this abuse of authority and pursue legal action." I hand-delivered the letter to their office. The look on Linda's face was priceless. For a moment, I thought that would be the end of it. But I underestimated them. 2 days later, I got another envelope. This time, it was thicker. Inside was a stack of violation notices. According to them, my grass was too long, my mailbox was faded, and my driveway had stains. None of it was true. I realized they were trying to bury me in fines to scare me into submission. But instead of backing down, their intimidation only fueled my determination. I knew I couldn't just fight this quietly. I needed to expose them. So I started documenting everything. I took photos of my yard, my mailbox, my driveway, proof that their claims were false. I kept every letter, every notice, every voicemail. And then, I prepared for war. The more I thought about it, the angrier I became. This wasn't just about paint anymore. This was about power. The HOA believed they could bully me into submission, and I refused to let that happen. But I also knew I couldn't do this alone. So, I called a lawyer. Her name was Jessica. She specialized in property and HOA disputes. When I explained my situation over the phone, she chuckled softly. "Let me guess," she said. "They're making up violations that don't exist in the bylaws?" "Yes," I replied. "Exactly. How did you know?" "Because this is what they do," Jessica said calmly. HOAs often overreach. They think homeowners won't push back. Most people get scared and pay the fines. But if you've documented everything, you're already one step ahead. Her confidence gave me strength. We scheduled a meeting the following week, and she asked me to bring all my evidence. That weekend, I decided to take a walk around the neighborhood. I wanted to see if anyone else was dealing with the same nonsense. Sure enough, I noticed little yellow envelopes taped to at least 3 other houses. One of my neighbors, a retired veteran named Bill, was outside mowing his lawn. I stopped to say hello. "Hey Bill, did you get one of those violation notices too?" He sighed and wiped sweat from his forehead. "Yeah. They fined me for having a flagpole in my yard. Said it was unsightly. Can you believe that? I fought for this country, and they're telling me I can't fly my flag." His voice cracked with frustration. Another neighbor, a young couple named Maria and Daniel, overheard us. Maria walked over, holding a letter in her hand. "They told us our garbage cans were visible from the street. But the cans are in the same spot as everyone else's. It feels like they're just targeting random people." That's when it hit me. It wasn't just me. The HOA was abusing power across the entire community. When I finally met with Jessica, I laid everything out on her desk: the letters, the photos, the rulebook. She carefully reviewed each piece of evidence. "Good work," she said, nodding. "This shows a clear pattern of harassment. And since the rules don't back up their claims, you have a strong case." I leaned forward. "So what's the plan?" "We'll start with a cease and desist letter," she explained. "That should put them on notice. If they continue, we escalate legal action, possibly even a class action lawsuit if other neighbors want to join." The idea of taking the HOA to court made my stomach churn, but it also filled me with hope. Maybe we could finally put an end to their tyranny. A week later, Jessica sent the letter. I waited nervously for their response. It didn't take long. The HOA called an emergency community meeting. Every homeowner was invited. When I walked into the clubhouse, the atmosphere was tense. People whispered in small groups, clutching violation letters. At the front of the room sat the HOA board members, 5 stern faces, including Linda, who glared at me the moment I entered. The president of the board, a balding man in a suit named Mr. Reynolds, cleared his throat. "We've received some concerns regarding our enforcement of community standards," he began. "Let us be clear, our goal is to maintain the beauty and value of this neighborhood." I raised my hand. "With all due respect, Mr. Reynolds, your enforcement has gone beyond what's written in the bylaws. I've reviewed them thoroughly. There are no rules about house paint colors, mailbox shades, or driveway stains. Yet you fine me thousands of dollars for these so-called violations." The room erupted in murmurs. Several neighbors nodded in agreement. Mr. Reynolds adjusted his glasses. "Sir, perhaps you misinterpreted the guidelines." I pulled out a printed copy of the rulebook. "No. I have it right here. And I'd be happy to read it aloud for everyone." Gasps filled the room as I flipped through the pages, pointing out the sections that proved my case. Maria and Daniel stood beside me, waving their own letters. Bill raised his hand, his voice firm. "I've had enough too. This HOA is out of control. One by one, more neighbors spoke up. Each had a story of unfair treatment, absurd fines, threats of legal action, harassment over the smallest details. The board tried to regain control, but the crowd was against them now. People who had been silent for months were finally finding their voices. Linda slammed her notebook shut. This is ridiculous. If you don't like the rules, perhaps this isn't the community for you. Her words only fueled the fire. I looked directly at her. No, Linda. The problem isn't the rules. The problem is you. You've been making them up as you go, terrorizing homeowners, and hiding behind the HOA's name. But not anymore. The applause that followed was thunderous. For the first time, I saw fear in the eyes of the board. That night, after the meeting ended, several neighbors came to my house. Bill shook my hand. You've got guts, son. I've been here 15 years, and I've never seen anyone stand up to them like that. Maria smiled. If you decide to take legal action, count us in. We'll stand with you. It felt good not to be alone anymore. What started as a personal battle was turning into a community movement. But deep down, I knew the fight was far from over. The HOA wasn't going to give up easily. And I was about to find out just how far they were willing to go. For a few days after the explosive community meeting, things went quiet. Almost too quiet. No yellow envelopes, no phone calls, no threats. My wife and I dared to hope maybe the board had backed down. But I should have known better. One morning, as I walked out to grab the newspaper, I noticed something strange on my driveway. A bright orange sticker, slapped across the hood of my car. Vehicle violation, unauthorized parking. I blinked in disbelief. My car was parked in my own driveway. How could that possibly be unauthorized? Later that afternoon, another letter arrived. According to the HOA, my vehicle was too old and detracted from the community's appearance. It was a 2014 Toyota. Hardly a junkyard car. I felt my blood boil. They weren't just making rules up anymore. They were targeting me personally, trying to wear me down until I gave up. That evening, my wife confronted me. Her eyes were filled with worry. Maybe we should just give in, she whispered. What if they take us to court? What if they put a lien on the house? This stress is eating us alive. I took her hands in mine. I know it's hard. But if we let them win, they'll keep doing this to everyone. Today it's us. Tomorrow it's Bill, or Maria, or someone else. We can't let them bully us. She nodded reluctantly, but I could see the fear in her face. And truthfully, I was scared too. The next day, I got a call from Jessica, my lawyer. Her voice was serious. They've hired a firm to represent them. They're threatening to sue you for non-compliance. I swallowed hard. On what grounds? They don't even have rules to back this up. That's true, Jessica said. But here's the thing. HOAs sometimes bank on homeowners not having the time or money to fight. They drag things out in court, hoping you'll cave. We need to be prepared. For a moment, doubt crept in. Was this fight worth it? Could I really take on an entire board and their lawyers? But then I thought about Bill's flag. Maria and Daniel's garbage cans. All the neighbors who had suffered in silence. No, this wasn't just about me anymore. Let's do it, I told Jessica. If they want a fight, they'll get one. Over the next few weeks, the harassment escalated. The HOA fined me for leaving my trash can at the curb 10 minutes too early. They claimed my fence was an inch too high. They accused me of having unauthorized landscaping because I planted roses in the front yard. Every day brought a new violation notice. My mailbox overflowed with threats. But instead of intimidating me, it only strengthened my resolve. I documented everything: photos, timestamps, witnesses. My neighbors even started helping. Maria snapped pictures when board members walked by my house with clipboards. Bill kept logs of every time they patrolled the street. It felt like a war zone, but slowly, I realized something: I wasn't alone anymore. One Friday evening, we gathered at my house, a dozen neighbors crammed into my living room. "This has gone too far," Maria said firmly. "They can't treat us like prisoners in our own homes." Bill slammed his fist on the table. "We need to take action. Not just one of us, all of us. Together." We talked late into the night, forming a plan. Jessica agreed to represent multiple homeowners if others wanted to join the case. By the end of the meeting, nearly everyone in the room had signed on. For the first time, the HOA wasn't facing one angry homeowner. They were facing a united community. But the board wasn't done yet. A week later, I woke up to find my water supply mysteriously shut off. At first, I thought it was a city issue. But when I called the utility company, they told me no work orders had been filed. It didn't take a genius to figure out who was behind it. When I confronted Mr. Reynolds at the next board meeting, his smug smile said everything. "Prove it," he said coldly. That was their game: intimidation and denial. But what they didn't realize was that every dirty trick only made them look worse. And soon, their empire of control was about to crumble. One night, lying in bed, I stared at the ceiling, exhausted from the fight. My wife turned to me and whispered, "Do you ever regret moving here?" I thought about it. About the quiet streets, the trimmed lawns, the false sense of security this neighborhood had promised. "No," I said slowly. "Because if we hadn't, maybe no one would have stood up to them. Maybe they'd still be running unchecked. At least now, we have a chance to change things." She squeezed my hand. For the first time in weeks, I felt a flicker of hope. The day finally came. After weeks of harassment, endless violation notices, and sleepless nights, it was time to face the HOA in court. Walking into the courthouse, I felt a mix of nerves and determination. Jessica walked beside me, calm and collected, carrying a thick binder of evidence. Behind us, a group of neighbors followed: Bill, Maria, Daniel, and half a dozen others. We weren't just fighting for one house anymore. We were fighting for our entire community. The HOA board was already there, sitting stiffly in their suits. Linda avoided my eyes, but Mr. Reynolds gave me a smug look, as if he'd already won. When the case was called, Jessica stood first. "Your Honor," she began, "my client has been the target of repeated, baseless harassment by this HOA. We have documented evidence that they issued fines for violations that do not exist in their bylaws. We will show that this was not only abusive but also unlawful." She presented photo after photo: my clean lawn, my unstained driveway, my perfectly standard beige house. She read aloud from the HOA's own rulebook, highlighting the complete absence of any mention of paint colors or vehicle restrictions. Then came the neighbors. One by one, they testified about their own experiences: fines for flagpoles, garbage cans, landscaping. The judge listened intently, his brow furrowing with every story. Finally, it was my turn. I stood, my voice steady despite the pounding in my chest. "Your Honor, I moved into this neighborhood believing it would be a safe and welcoming place. Instead, I was treated like a criminal in my own home. Every day, new threats arrived in my mailbox. My family was harassed, our peace destroyed, all because the HOA wanted control. But the rules they claimed I broke? They don't even exist. This isn't about community standards. It's about abuse of power." The courtroom fell silent. When the HOA's lawyer rose to speak, their argument was weak. They claimed I was disturbing harmony and resisting compliance. But when the judge asked them to point to the exact bylaw about house paint, they stammered. Pages flipped. Silence followed. The judge's expression hardened. "Do you mean to tell me," he said slowly, "that you fined this man thousands of dollars without any written rule to support it?" The HOA lawyer cleared his throat. "Well, Your Honor, it is implied in the spirit of the community aesthetic." The judge slammed his gavel. "Implied is not law. You cannot invent rules at your convenience." The ruling was swift. All fines against the plaintiff are voided. Furthermore, the HOA is hereby ordered to cease harassment and pay damages for emotional distress and legal fees. This court will not tolerate abuse of authority under the guise of community management. Gasps echoed in the courtroom. Linda's face turned pale. Mr. Reynolds sank back in his chair, defeated. Meanwhile, my neighbors erupted into whispers of relief and triumph. Dill slapped me on the back. Maria wiped tears from her eyes. For the first time in months, I felt like I could finally breathe. But the victory didn't end in court. Word spread quickly through the neighborhood. Homeowners who had once been silent started speaking up, demanding accountability. Within weeks, a petition circulated calling for the resignation of the entire board. The signatures piled up fast. At the next election, every single board member was voted out. A new committee was formed, one that promised transparency, fairness, and respect for the homeowners. For the first time, the HOA actually served the people, instead of terrorizing them. Standing on my porch one evening, I watched as kids played in the street and neighbors chatted happily. The atmosphere felt lighter, freer. My wife came up beside me, smiling for the first time in weeks. "We did it," she whispered. I nodded. "No. We did it. The whole neighborhood. Together." Dill waved from across the street, his American flag flying proudly once more. Maria and Daniel walked by with their dog, garbage cans visible and unapologetic. Life was normal again, but better. Because now, we knew we had power. We knew that when we stood together, even the biggest bully couldn't push us around. Looking back, I realized something important. The HOA had tried to control me. They thought I was just one homeowner they could crush. But their biggest mistake wasn't underestimating me. It was underestimating all of us. Because in the end, this wasn't just my story. It was our story. A story about standing up, fighting back, and reclaiming the right to live in peace in our own homes. And to anyone else out there struggling with an HOA like mine, remember this. They only have power if you let them. And that's how one homeowner stood up against an out-of-control HOA and won. Remember, they only have power if you let them. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more unbelievable HOA and Karen stories, only on American HOA Stories.